Okay, so today I'm going to demo for you again how I paint sweeties in watercolor. I'm going to do the loose version. There's a loose way to do sweeties and there's a tighter way to do sweeties. It all just depends on how much time you want to put into it and what your end goal is. So for the loose sweeties, I usually like to just keep it an hour or so, maybe less. Probably more for this though, because I'm going to be walking you through everything I'm going to be doing. And this is the second time that I'm recording this because the first time I used a camera that was apparently way out of date and the footage didn't transfer very good. So I'm going to try it again and I'm going to try and do something a little different with this. As Ralph Steadman says, a mistake is just an opportunity to do something different. I'll grab a paper towel. Oops. So just real quick, I'll start with the paper. So this is Strathmore paper. It's the one that's currently with the brown cover. It's watercolor paper, hot press. I want to say. I should actually just look at it and tell you. Strathmore watercolor cold press. I was wrong. Acid-free, heavyweight for finished work. The one that looks like this, 400 series. It's a good paper. I like it. And it's an odd size. The paper as it comes in here is 5.5 by 8.5 inches, which with watercolor, you usually, when it's done, most of the time you'll want to put it in a mat or a picture frame. I like to do it with a mat and a picture frame because the mat keeps the glass of the frame off the actual painting. But either way, the standard sizes for mats and picture frames are 5 by 7, 4 by 6, that's like a photo size, 5 by 7, 6 by 8, 8 by 10, and it goes up. And so an 8.5 by 5.5 mat or frame, you're going to have custom done, and it's just going to be more money. And also with watercolor, you usually want to have that border area around it. So what I do is I use a ruler like this. This one's kind of beaten up, but I have a cleaner one, and it's got these kind of smooth, maybe you can see it better. No, you can see it better on this one. It's got these graphs on it that are an inch, half inch, and then you can just put it on the paper like this. You have to do a little math, subtract 8.5 by whatever that takes to get to 7. 8.5 minus x equals 7. Do a little algebra, figure it out. It's not that hard, and when you can look at the actual graphs, it's as easy as just counting down from that. And then I take a pencil and I do the line, and then I put the tape on that, and then it'll be a nice 5 by 7, so that way if I like it or if I sell it or something, I can put it in a nice mat, and either a frame or the buyer can put it in a frame. Or if you're making it for yourself or as a gift, you can do that too. And the tape is, I think it's just the Blick brand tape, which is made for this kind of paper. You got to be careful with the tapes because sometimes you'll get one of the cheaper ones or something and it's a little bit too strong. The adhesive is too strong and it rips off the paper. So test it out first, see if it rips the paper at all, and if it does, what you can do is you can just kind of put it on your clothes, on your pants or something, put the adhesive side on your pants and then peel it off a few times, and that will weaken the adhesive, so it'll hold the paper down but it won't rip the paper off when you pull it off at the end. Okay, so Now let's go to colors. I've got, for this one, for the last one that I did that didn't come out very good, but I'm gonna post anyways. I used a variation of the Zorn palettes, so cadmium red, yellow ochre, black, and then I also used burnt sienna as kind of a middle between the cadmium red and the yellow ochre. So for this one today, I am going to use burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, and then I'm going to use this cadmium red as kind of just a, because the ultramarine blue and the burnt sienna are going to create like a gray, and so I'm going to use this as like a very intense red to kind of add some color to that. And the reason why I'm choosing those three colors, the reason why I choose three colors is to just keep it kind of limited. Focus on, it lets you focus on the value if you use a limited palette, and it just makes it so that there's less decisions to think about. Sometimes you want to use a lot of colors in a painting. Usually I think it's better to limit the palette though, and I'll talk more about that in a different video probably. Okay, so brushes. I've got this one that I keep pointing at things with. I don't even know if I'm going to use it. This is a stroke brush, so it's good for just pushing down one stroke of paint at a time. It's also good for washes because of how big it is, and it's also pretty soft once I actually clean it off. This one's a little dirty, so it's going to be a little harder on the bristles. Oh, a brush avalanche. Where'd that one go? Oh, it was one that I'm probably not going to use anyways. I'm not going to use that. So I've got these wash brushes. They have nice soft bristles and they hold a lot of water, and they're great for covering big spaces with water and light paint, a light paint load. I have two different varieties. This one's a Mottler brush, and I use it for washes. It's also good for blending. I'm going to be using these round brushes, number 4. One's longer bristle, one's shorter bristle. There's no real reason for that. It's just what I have on hand, but the longer one will be better for fine lines and stuff. But you can use them both kind of this way and cover more ground with them, or you can use the top down. And with brushes, it's kind of just use them and see what feels best. The round ones feel best to me. I just gravitate towards them. This is a stroke brush. It's good for just laying on one stroke. It's also got these nice bristles so that you can, if you use the side of it, you can add some textures and stuff. I should just show you how they work as I go with the painting, but I'm still kind of picking out which ones I want to use. So actually, you know what? I'm going to use this big filbert brush that I have never used before, and it's been sitting in with my brushes for, like 3 years now, and I don't think I've ever used it. So I think I'm going to start with this for my wash brush, actually. And the filbert just has that round edge. But since it's so big, it's going to hold a lot of water and wash it the way that I need to. Okay, so other than that, I have paper towel. This is the type of paper towels that like mechanics use and stuff. It's good for pulling paint off. I use it more with my acrylics because I need to pull the paint off. With watercolor, it comes off with the water, but also this is gonna make less sound, and that's the main reason why I'm using it in this video. I've got my spray bottle. It's good to activate the watercolor in the pan. And I've got a few other brushes that are kind of like falling apart. They'll be good for textures and stuff maybe. And of course I've got my water. Lots of clean water in a basin. And one more thing, I like it because it's separated, so I can keep one for the dirty water and then two for the clean colors. If you're using like warm and cool, or once I start adding white, I'm going to want to pay attention to which basin I'm using that in. I will probably, maybe I'll do a separate video about that sometime. So let's get into this sweetie. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to get a lot of water on this brush. It's good to pay attention to the metal part of the brush. Right now it doesn't matter because I'm at the beginning, but sometimes you get water on that metal part and it drips down onto your painting when you don't want it to. Right now it's all good though. Right now it's all good, man. Okay, so I'm painting a vague head shape, and I just added some water where I didn't really mean to, and that's going to change the character of it. And you might not be able to see it from any of those angles because I haven't added color, and it's just clear on water. And so I'm moving my head around and kind of seeing where everything is at with it. I think I'm going to go this way with it. And now I'm going to make, I should have done this first actually. I'm going to make a mixture of my ultramarine and my burnt sienna. And so that's already making like a gray blue. And if you use more burnt sienna than blue, it's going to be warmer. If you use more ultramarine than burnt sienna, it's going to be cooler. And I kind of want it to be, either way, it's going to be pretty neutral. It's going to be neutral leaning towards warm or neutral leaning towards cool. Unless you add very little of either one to each. So I want it to be, and I want it to be kind of thick because I want it to bleed into the water. I mean, kind of thin. I don't know why I said thick. And now I'm getting the sense that this brush wants to retain the colors in it. So it might not be the best brush to do this part with. So I'm going to get a round brush like this, get a little water on it and a little more color. And it also might be these colors that aren't going to want to run either, but let's see. So I'm going to decide which side the color will be on, or which side the shadow will be on. Yeah, so these colors are not going to run the way that I was intending. And that's okay. We can figure out something else by adding more water to it. That'll help it run a little bit. And you know what? At this stage, I'm going to use, this is some burnt umber, and it's like watercolor ink. So it's very runny, and just because I want there to be more of a bleed, I'm going to add some of this. So I'm already going against the two colors, the two color idea that I had at first, but it's early days, so. And I'm just kind of following the shape of the head. Now I'm going to use this brush to add a little bit more water. I want to just add tone at this point. It's a good head shape. I'm happy with that head shape. But let's add a little bit more of this. always got to remind myself to mix more colors than I think I'll need, because I'm used to working small, and you can get away with having smaller colors. I think that there was some sap green in that tray that I'm mixing in. Actually, that's really good tone. I am not going to add, maybe to like right here, a little bit more of that gray. Yeah, that's a good tone. Okay, and so now what I like to do, and the reason why I keep it on this hardboard, is so that I can put it up here and let it drip a little bit, or a lot. And I already see kind of like a mouth shape right there. And, whoops. And I don't see where the eyes are, so I'm just going to put them where they would be in relationship to that mouth. Just kind of some eye sockets right there. And I like the difference between this warm side and this cool side. And I'm going to actually use some of this burnt umber now. I don't have any on my palette, so I'm just going to put a blob of it on here, because that ended up being a bigger part of the painting than I originally thought. And one of the main reasons why I like doing these sweeties is because it really is kind of like an improvisation. I'm just going with the flow. I have an idea at first, but the point is not to follow that. That's for another time. Those are other projects where you decide you're going to use the limited palette and then you stick with it. We'll keep going in the eyes with that. And it's bleeding out in a way that I didn't expect it to. And that's okay too. And now, you know what, since we're I didn't even know if I was going to bring this out or not, but I got this book recently, and it's just facial expressions for amateurs. So I'm going to just kind of flip through it and see if I see an expression that sticks with me. Wait. Excuse me. I've actually never looked at this book before. I got it a while ago at the used bookstore, local used bookstore, and I got it for reasons such as this, and I thought I would have it on hand for this just in case I wanted to change it up a little bit. And I kind of like this one right here. I don't think I'm going to go for it because the pose of the painting is different. This is at a 3/4 and mine is, it looks like the head is turning. So that's something I want to keep in mind. And I'm gonna start drawing. I have that idea in mind. I'm not gonna try and do it perfectly, but I'm just going to try and draw. A little bit more in the spirit of that pose than anything. And I gotta move it out of the way so that I can still see it, but you won't be able to. Cheeks, mouth, light and shadow, and the forms of the faces. And this burnt sienna is kind of becoming the main feature of this so far. So I'm just going to try and add a little bit more of that ultramarine in there, just to give it some variation right now. Not worrying about too much what the logic is, just because it feels right, basically. It's like an improvisation. And I've always liked to keep this like white background on these sweetie studies. No reason for that in particular. I think it just gives them more of like a character illustration vibe or something. I like to give backgrounds to other types of paintings, but for these, I like to leave the background blank. Now I'm looking at the edges to see if there's anything I'll want to wipe away while it's still wet. And I don't really see anything that I want to wipe away, but I do want to kind of soften this edge right here. And that kind of took some of the value away, so I'm going to put a little bit of it back. But there's going to be more value under here, so... And let's see, I might want it to be a little bit more light right here. And right here on these cheekbones. And let's give the chin a little light too. So I'm just imagining a light, and this time it's coming from this way, up and down, from up and to the left of the character to our right. And I keep that in mind, and I try and keep in mind the forms of the face. And when I did that with the paper towel, I actually like kind of, it gave him kind of like a little smile here. He's showing his teeth now. Some more ultramarine. And the burnt sienna has kind of become I've kind of stopped using it. So I'm going to mix a little bit more of it into the ultramarine. And I'm also trying to think of the planes of the head too. So I know that there's like one here, just too dark. So nice thing about watercolor is if it's too dark, get a wet brush and shape it a little bit. And you can't do it too much or too hard with watercolor because of the paper. The paper will start to come up and it'll just ruin the paper. So you don't want to do that. There's a little shadow under here, under where his eye is. Not like that though, so let's take some of that back. And his nose. I see it coming down like this. I think it's got to be burnt sienna. Burnt umber, I mean. Like that. A little darker in here. And I'm just still letting it bleed It's starting to dry now, so the paint isn't running as much, but it's still running a little bit. And there is more value in the teeth that I was just about to add, but I'm going to wait for a little bit. First, I want to get kind of the drawing part right. And I think that there will be more of a shadow under here on this part of the neck. So it's it would also probably be lighter right. It would probably be lighter right here, but I love the texture that I have going on right here, and I don't want to do anything to it yet. So I'm just going to leave it as it is. I'm going to sit back and look at it a little bit. And I'm trying to say kind of everything that I'm thinking about while I'm doing it, because the teachers that I've gotten the most value from can do that really well. So that's, if you're like, geez, why is this guy talking so much? I will make other videos where I talk less, but when I'm doing kind of demonstrations about painting in real time, I think that it's beneficial to do that. So I'm looking at the eye sockets right now, and I like the overall values in shape, but I think it's missing kind of an eye, like a, because I don't know if I want it to be an actual eyeball, but there is something, there is like a moment that needs to happen, like here, and it's small, but, and it's got to be enough to actually stay on the paper. Something like that. And I don't think I like that actually. I think I liked it better before. But so I'm getting kind of fussy with it. Sorry, that's my back popping. I'm an old man. I actually like where this is, right about here. Yeah, I think that the values look pretty good. The shapes look really good. I'm really happy with the shapes. Squinting my eyes while I look at it to see if anything pops out at me. It kind of is like those eye sockets that I'm the most uncertain about, because I don't know what should be in there. Sometimes I give them eyes, sometimes I give them like little slits. There's something about the nose too that's actually, it looks kind of interesting. I think the shadow isn't, I think what it is the shadow isn't fully going where it would go. I'm looking back at the semi-reference, which is hard to look at because the lighting is different and everything in it, so I'm trying to only get the facial expression, and I've basically abandoned it. So that idea is not working out. This is more of a straightforward portrait. This character didn't want to make a funny face, so he's not making a funny face. At least that's what I tell myself. I'm just adding more definition to the neck right here, I guess, so that this part right here is kind of a nice little accidental area, but this is the actual neck. So I'm kind of reinforcing that, but leaving that there to be a nice, I don't know, I think of it as like reminders of the primal paint stuff that these characters come out of. And I'm just going to take this and give it a, that's just to kind of see what happens with that. Again, I like to think of it as improvisation. Thinking on the spot. And now I see what the eye is. It's kind of just going to be an opening. And this one doesn't have to match. It's going to go something like that. Yeah, there you are. There you are, my little friend. That nose looks all crooked now, which I like. I'm going to kind of emphasize that. There should also be more shadow under this side of the nose too. Yeah, like that. Now it looks like this is a pupil, but I'm thinking of that more as a value. So this is not necessarily I don't know if it's frowned upon by watercolorists, but it might be painting with the back of the brush like that, because that seems like more of a water or an oil and acrylic thing to do. Just getting a little bit of water on the brush and kind of blending this down a little bit. Okay, I shouldn't be in the details that much right now. Still looking at the form. And this side of the face still looks really busy. I'm squinting my eyes. The value here, because the value here, when if I just kind of look at it through my hand like this, move it over, it's basically the same value right there and right there. And if the light's coming from here, it's not going to be the same exact value as that. It'll be a little bit darker. So I don't think I'm going to change it right now. I'm going to just try and keep that in mind. Right now I'm just kind of looking at what's going on with it and planning, scheming. I'm scheming for you though. And at this point, when you run out of patience, you can blow it dry. So after you blow it dry too, with the watercolors, the values will go down, and a lot of times the saturation of the colors will also go down when the watercolor dries. It depends on which pigment you're using, so it depends on which brand of watercolor it is and which series it is, and like what the color is made out of. Cheaper colors will get more faded as it goes on. More expensive colors, in theory, shouldn't get more faded, but they do sometimes. Depends on the pigment. I don't have the best guide for that. It's one of those things that you pick up as you go along. So for example, the burnt umber I'm using this is a pretty cheap burnt umber. This is, I don't know if I should say brands. It's Dalaroni, I'll say it. Sue me. But it's like a more affordable brand, right? And more affordable usually means that it's made out of stuff that's more affordable to produce, and that just means that the pigment concentration won't be as high, or it won't be very quality, or other factors like that. What they use as a binder isn't a good binder. Sometimes there's all sorts of factors like that in paint. And I'm just looking at this guy right now. I really am happy with the general, with the overall of it, which is what that stage of the painting is all about. And now I'm getting a few more brushes that I didn't talk about before. So this one and this one. These are shader brushes. They're flat. You might be able to see them better on this camera. They're flat. I'm gonna have to wash them off because the tops are really hard, and that means that there's paint in them, or the soap I used to clean them. This one's not. And they are good for shading color. That's basically what they're made for. And at this point in the painting, I'm going to get my cadmium red involved in this dance. I think that that'll be a good thing. So with these shaders, I'm also going to use my pointy brush. When I teach kids, this one's called Little Pointy. Not this exact one. They don't use brushes this nice, but the ones that are shaped like this are called Little Pointy, and then these ones are called Flatties. So I'm gonna take Little Pointy, I'm gonna get some water on it, I'm gonna spray these colors, and I'm going to get my cadmium red. Oops, I got a little alizarin, burnt umber in that cadmium red, which is okay. And the reason why I said alizarin is because burnt umber and cadmium red mixed together will make a color that's kind of close to alizarin. Alizarin has other properties that those colors don't have, but I'm going to start with the gums. Okay, my sweeties tend to have very gummy mouths. I don't know why that is. It's just I like painting gums and teeth on creatures like this. In classic portrait drawing and portraiture, one of the things that they teach you is to not define the gums or individual teeth that much because it looks creepy. And I didn't find that out until after I had been doing that intentionally for a long time. But when I was reading like Andrew Loomis or something like that, I came across that line and I thought, oh, well, that makes sense. So if you're trying to make something that doesn't look creepy, don't do gums and teeth the way that I do. And I'm adding this red to the eyes now because there's going to be a lot of blood around the eyes. You can see the blood around the eyes. And so now what I'm going to do, since I have kind of a thick thing of red right there, is I'm going to just blend it down the face a little bit to add some of that red around the face. This is almost like glazing, but you have to be conscientious of the fact that the paint is going to reactivate when you add water to it. So you don't want to add too much water at a time, and you want it to dry in between. So I'll do the same thing to the mouth now. Just to add a little color around the mouth. And how about around this tip of this nose here? Let's add a little color there too. Yeah. Maybe I'll get some of that paint off the brush, get a little clean water on it, and spread that baby just a little bit more so it's going to be nice and thin. Now I'm looking back at it. This can be blended more. Not too much. Gotta be careful. Let's put some around here on where the burnt umber meets this plane that's more in the light. Just right on that edge. That will give it a little bit, make that form turn a little bit more. So I'm cleaning that off, getting some clean water on it, but I'm also touching the paper towel, the clean parts of the paper towel, to get it a little drier. You just want it damp. You don't want it dripping wet. And again, you want to make sure that this metal part of the brush doesn't have water on it, because otherwise it'll drip onto your painting. And at this stage, normally I would probably put the painting back down here, but since I have this big palette and I also have water that I can't really move around, I'm just going to leave it up here. But normally I would do this part flat because watercolor brushes are more made for that because they have shorter handles. Acrylic brushes and oil brushes like this have the longer handles so that you can paint against the easel. Watercolor brushes have shorter handles so you can do this, but you can still draw with it on an easel. It's fine. So I should have introduced this as how to draw creepy faces, because that's what I'm doing. That's how I introduced the last one, and that's what this is, but I call them sweeties. And I call them that because when I was a few years ago, I was really on a creative roll, a creative tear, painting in acrylic, and then I was very stressed out because I had to go on a family vacation, and I thought that's gonna kill my creative fire right now. I'm on a roll. And so I got a pad of watercolor papers and a little watercolor, one of these little watercolor palettes like this, and just so I could paint something even while I was on vacation, and I started painting these. And during that trip I met with some friends and I said, "Good morning, sweeties," and we all laughed and started calling each other sweeties, and so I started calling these characters sweeties. I told that story in the last video, but I don't know if anyone will see the last video, so I'm sorry for repeating myself, but also if you haven't seen the other video, that's the first time I've told that story. It was right now. Okay, while I was telling that story, I'm still just adding a little bit of color to around the eyes and stuff. And I'm going to add a little more up in here. Up in here where y'all gonna make me lose my mind and go all out. like how this one's kind of like a loop. And I'm noticing that I haven't used a whole lot of the ultramarine blue, and I don't want to use it just for the sake of using it, but I am keeping my eye out for places where it would make sense because it is on the painting. So there are probably moments that will call for it, and so if I don't know what to do with the red or the umber or the mixture, neutral mixture that I made, might be an indication that it's the ultramarine blue. I'm going to mix some more of this burnt sienna. I'm going to mix it into the ultramarine, but I'm going to make this mixture more sienna-y. This is where it's good to have don't want to paint on that. I don't want to paint on this because a student made this for me. But a piece of watercolor paper. Let's see, maybe I have an old painting that, yeah, I will paint on the back of this plein air study that I did for a watercolor demo. I want to see how dark this mixture is that I made. That is pretty dark. I mean, it might as well be burnt umber. So I'm going to activate all that real quick. I'm going to leave this piece of paper kind of up here so that I can test on there. I'm going to clear out a little bit of a spot. I'm going to keep some of that because I'm probably going to want to use it later, but I want to add some of that and then bring some of this in. And it's still, no, it's lighter. Burnt sienna is a very bright color. Bright not meaning light, bright meaning it's sticks out, it's saturated. Even though it's a brown, it's just very, it announces itself. And I'm just fixing that value that I mentioned earlier. And I'm going to add a little bit of this, what I have on the brush up here too, to kind of help round this form out a little bit more. This form of the head. It's kind of a good color for that. And I'm going to rinse off the brush and I'm just going to kind of blend it a little bit. Now, I think it's going to need more of that color on the head now that I've introduced it there. And actually maybe some of the ultramarine blue as well. I want to add more water to it though because I want it to be pretty transparent. And so I have my brush here, my test paper here, and I'm testing it out first. Now I will add it to the head. So keeping in mind where the plane of that head will be, something like that. And also I'm noticing that the way I did this shape, actually, it's caused by the way that the paper kind of buckled when I put the water on it. It looks like his head is going like this. So I'm going to add just a little bit of this value in here too to help emphasize that head shape. Get a little water on it and kind of blend it out a little bit. When in doubt. And then the fold will continue over here, and so we'll just add a little bit there to remind us. This one makes me laugh, and I'm seeing some. Okay, so now this is where I'm going to add. Oh, actually, I was gonna look for a ratty brush, but this might be the perfect brush. See those little hairs on it? I'm going to take some of this burnt umber. I'm going to test it out on this paper, test out this brush, see what I can get away with here. And this little part was just part of the original painting, but as I made that fold, I could see some hair. I might have rushed into that too quickly. No, it goes more like this. He has hair that's more like this. It sticks straight up. It doesn't go down like that. More like mad scientist hair. And I think I went too high up with it. So you're going to see the follicles. I hate that word, but you're going to see them sticking into the head over here because of the way that I drew it. It's not really doing anything for me, but I put it on there, and so I'm stuck with it. So the best thing to do in that situation is to not think about it for a minute. Let's go back to these eyes. I'm going to mix a darker color, so not too much water. I'm going to get a nice juicy amount of this ultramarine blue. I don't know why I keep forgetting the name of it, but ultramarine blue, and I'm going to use some of this burnt umber too, and I'm going to mix them together, and that's going to make a darker neutral. The ultramarine blue and burnt umber tends to make a very dull black. There are better pigments to use to make a good deep black than ultramarine and burnt umber, but it will make a black if you mix enough of it together. And this burnt umber is actually kind of has a maroon-ish tint to it, so it's not as dull as some of the other burnt umbers. Now I'm just adding a few details to the eye. Don't want to go overboard because then that will commit me to a lot more detail. That's not the only reason why. I mean, I definitely want to keep this loose as a sketch. This is going to be a loose sweetie, not a tight sweetie. But also you just don't, less is more in most of the things that we do as artists. Most of the things. Now those will dry transparently, so I'm going to let them do that before I decide if that is too much or too little black. And it's unavoidable. What are we gonna do about that hair? I think that we're going to have to commit to it and do it on the other side as well. So I'm going to use the round brush this time, And let's see how it's going on our test piece here. And I'm just gonna go right here. Yeah, that's about where it would be. Oh, too much again. We're committed though. We're committed to giving him too much hair. He's gonna have a bald spot for sure. Not because he deserves it, but just because he has the gene for it. Okay, so that's kind of the shape of it. And then I'm going to get some more of this on this brush, test it out, make sure it's not too runny. And add some individuals. And now that gives me an idea of how this side should go too. Yeah, more like that. I should probably wrap up soon anyways, but this is looking good for now. I might add a little bit more of this dark into the eye here on the corner, because I think I am going to want there to be kind of an eyeball right there. I don't think I will do one on this side, just one eye open, gripping his pillow tight. There we go. And I'm going to add a little bit more to the teeth. Again, if you want to make creepy faces, you define individual teeth and gums. If you want to make beautiful portraits, you leave them as bigger shapes. I've seen a lot of students, and I've done this myself, draw like a really nice head shape with, you know, good placement of features and everything, and then they just get way too happy about the teeth and they start defining them, and then they get unnerved at how creepy it looks. And I tell them I love it because I do. But then I also explain, well, if you don't want it to look that way, you gotta keep the teeth and gums kind of to a minimum detail-wise. It's interesting that drawing and painting can be that way. But then in photorealism, if you do it, it looks photorealistic by definition, and that's not as off-putting. So it's just a matter of kind of like an uncanny valley kind of effect. If you get it exactly right, it looks good. If you don't, people are repulsed by it. I hope that people aren't repulsed by this, but I know that there's a whole bunch of people that are, because they tell me. Let's add a little more detail to this whole situation with the eye over here. Now let's mix some of this red with this burnt sienna-ish over here, and we'll add some of this to this side of the face, just to stay in with the light adding a little bit more tone to this side of the head, but that's a little bit too, that was kind of lazy the way that I did that with just using the one because it was already on my brush, because there was a cooler color there that I thought worked better. And so now I'm gonna go over it again with more of a cool mixture. Whoops, I missed the paper towel. And now take this, kind of blend it down a little bit. And add a little bit of water to that mix and add a little value to help turn that a little bit. Now we're losing our bump, so we'll add a little bit more value there. And that bump indicates that this bump should have more shadow too. And there will be like a cast shadow coming from under there too. Yeah, it's getting there. We're almost done. I'm not going to do what I was just about to do. Sometimes you gotta stop yourself. Alright, so a little bit more red, and I don't know if I think I am going to add a little bit of gouache to some highlights on the gums maybe. And probably to lighten up some under the eyes, but I don't want to go too far with it. So I'm doing as much as I can with the watercolors, because it's easy to, once you start with something, you go too far and then you have to go more with it, and that's good. That's one of the joys of painting to me, but it's also not the point of what I'm doing here. This is more of a loose watercolor sketch. Let's add a little bit of this value in here because it's a little bit too white behind that. So we'll just add, that's probably too much, but I think I'm stuck with it. Ah, got a little too happy. Bring some of these follicles down. Hold your breath. It's a good sign when they make me laugh. Okay, I think I will add the gouache now. So again, I haven't said this in this video, but I have this pile right here is burnt sienna gouache. This is white gouache. These are watercolors. I'm not going to use the burnt sienna. I am going to use the white. There's a little bit of black in it, so I'm going to wash it off. And this is dried out white right there. So I'm going to add, if I can find it, it's got to be somewhere. Oops. Some fresh white. And there is a little bit of the colors I've been using on this brush, and that is contaminating the white, and that's good to me. I don't want it to be pure white yet. I also don't want to contaminate my watercolors over here because I might want to use them more in the future. So when I do want to bring some of these colors over, I'm going to use a brush that does not have white on it yet. Spray it with these, keep it all nice and wet and loose. And this is more of the, let's zoom in with this camera now. This is more of the value that I'm looking for at this stage. It's more of a gray, because light is usually more. We're gonna just add a few highlighted spots on these gums here. And these are starting off very, very bright, but I know that when they dry, they're going to be less white. And I'll mix a little bit more water with this right here, because I just want to lighten this a little bit. Right under the eye, right there. And I'm also going to want to add a little highlight in there on this side of the eye, and one on the top of the eye right here, which I will come back with more opaque gouache for later. And there will also be another one on the gum, and then maybe on kind of the edge of the tooth here. The edge of these teethies. That might be too much, but I'm not going to think about it too much. Debating on this eye, because it's easy to go overboard with highlights. I'll add more dark. And we'll darken this. This just emphasizes that there's more of an opening right there. Maybe there was an eye there at one point. And this is actually a good tone for some other parts of the eye here. I think that eye could get, let me use the other brush to get a little bit of, actually let's use that mix right there. I could kind of see where there's like a more defined eye with these values that I have. And so under here would be get some of that. I just really need one. I'll just do the burnt sienna and darken it. I guess I will contaminate my watercolors a little bit. I'm going to clean them off. I just need one value that's a little bit darker and in between, and for the shadow under the lid, like that. Now, clean it off because I've got to go a value down and do the top of the eyelid to make that shadow work a little bit better. There, now it's in there. Now the eyeball sits back in there and has a shadow on it. And now we can get into a little bit lighter of the value and add some of this. Gotta remember that it's a ball in there. Now we can take some of the white, which I'm still mixing with another color. I don't know if it shows up on there. Yeah, it does. So this value right here is definitely darker than that value right there, but it's going to be light enough. Hold your breath. And one in here too. Moisture. And it might be that's gonna dry quick, and will probably add a little bit more red to it because there will be some more red in the eye like that. And my sound recorder is running out of time, so I am trying to wrap it up. But we're in the last stages of Armageddon here. A little bit of red to that eye. A little bit of red around the eye. And some water to that red. And we'll kind of blend it. And this one wet. Make sure it's clean. I like it. Just doing another look over, fixing things that I think need fixing. That shadow can be more shadowy. If I add a little bit of water, I can probably make this make a little bit more sense value-wise. I could also probably, if I get just a tiny bit on the brush, I can start to make some of these little areas of texture look more conformed to the form. Yes, like that. Don't have to do it with all of them because you will not focus on the whole thing at once. And now that I see it, there should be more of a shadow right there, which would also cast the shadow this way. And there does need to be a little bit more coloration to that. And slightly more value. There. All right, well, I should wrap it up there. That last little, what's it called? That last little rodeo I went on, I would probably continue to do that for a while if I wanted to. There's other things I would probably change about it, but I'm happy with how it is, and that's basically the process. I don't think that there's anything else I wanted to say about it. but I will probably do another one of these again at some point, maybe with different colors, or I don't know. Let me know what you think I should do for it. I'm open to suggestions. Patrons obviously get top priority, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to post this one publicly, assuming that the camera stuff works out, unlike it did last time. So, but anybody is welcome to give me sweetie suggestions, and also feel free to try and give this sweetie a name. I'm not the best at naming them, but I'm the best at stealing your names that you come up with for them. All right, have fun.